Good evening. They've suffered months of disruption. Now angry commuters on Southern Rail are planning to take the government to court for failing to solve the dispute. Passengers have faced chaos and say this is their only option, as Mary Stanley reports.
Commuters say they've had enough. Fed up with months of wrangling between Southern Trains and the RMT, passengers are taking action. Today, the Brighton-based Association of British Commuters began a crowdfunding appeal to take the government to court for failing to resolve the issue.
We've seen 5 months of absolute misery. Nothing has happened and nothing has changed. We've asked the Department for Transport to work with us. We've asked for them to meet with us. We've had nothing. So that we really do feel that this is the last avenue, on the route to accountability.
The group say they'll compile evidence of job losses and disruption to family life caused by cancelled services and delays, the result of a long-running dispute over the role of guards and high levels of staff sickness. This was the reaction of passengers to the move.
Can't leave it, they can't keep going on strike. It's just affecting everyone trying to get to work and people having to change jobs.
There's so many people who are missing appointments for doctors who need to be somewhere at times of crisis as well, when people need to be in the hospital for someone.
Certainly it's not acceptable for a professional service to have all the cancellations that there has been. So something needs to be done for sure.
But there's further misery to come, as the RMT is holding a 48-hour strike on Wednesday and Thursday this week. Mary Stanley, ITV News.
In other news, a motorist has been jailed for 9 years after he admitted causing the death of a cyclist in Hampshire. Lee Martin was knocked off his bike on the A31 near Bentley in August last year. 30-year-old Christopher Gard from Alton pleaded guilty to causing death by dangerous driving. He was texting just before the collision. Concern is growing for a pregnant woman from Dorset who's been missing for 6 days. Katie Miles, who's 29, was last seen leaving Poole Hospital at 6 p.m. last Tuesday. She failed to return for an appointment later that evening. Police are appealing for her to get in touch. Police patrols will continue in the Lords Hill area of Southampton after a public order incident on Saturday. 7 people were arrested in connection with a disturbance at a house in Jersey Close. They've been bailed pending further inquiries. Now, Wiltshire Police say it's seen a dramatic reduction in the number of people with mental health problems coming into custody. It follows a pilot scheme where specialist nurses are used to help frontline officers. Karen Bell has more details.
Mentally ill and locked in a cell, this man rocked back and forth for over 2 hours. Of the 10,000 people arrested by Wiltshire Police each year, around half have mental health problems. This is where they end up, often for at least 24 hours. In one cell, I found a man accused of assault. He'd broken his hand and told me he'd punched a wall because of his depression. He'd been in his cell in Swindon all night.
Just feel stupid. It's the last place I'd want to end up, if I'm honest.
For years, police have struggled with a health burden that they don't feel qualified to deal with, and they see it all.
Panic attacks, mild depression, and then we go right through to the other scale where we have people in severe crisis, people with paranoid schizophrenia, we have personality disorders, and we're not professionals at dealing with mental health, and while staff have got an awareness of it, it's really tricky trying to deal with people who are in that sort of crisis.
So Wiltshire Police is piloting a new scheme with the aim of keeping mentally ill people out of custody. It starts here in the control room where they handle 999 calls.
Hi, Street Triage, Trudy speaking. Can I help?
Trudy is a mental health nurse on standby to advise officers on the ground and those around her on the phone. She liaises with psychiatric health services and counsels people who are feeling depressed or suicidal. One of her recent successes, helping a man who'd gone missing and was then found by police.
I had a long conversation with the gentleman that was involved, and we came up with a plan of how to keep him safe, what he needed, what he felt he needed. I think he kind of got that sense of empowerment by having someone to talk to.
For those who do end up in custody, psychiatric nurses are now on standby to come into the cells to offer help, assessment and support. Tom was surprised by how much support has been made available to him here.
A bit strange that they've been more supportive than my GP. It's a bit sad that it's taken this to get some sort of help.
Wiltshire Police will review the scheme next year with a view to implementing it permanently. But there is already a renewed focus in the force. It's no longer just about who they're keeping in the cells, but also who they're keeping out.
Bell reporting there. Now, the junior doctors' strike planned for next week has been called off. The BMA has suspended the 5 days of action due to start on the 12th, but the remaining programme of industrial action will still go ahead. Human skulls and other artefacts from the Mary Rose are being exhibited online in 3D for the very first time. The ship sank in the Solent 471 years ago. It's hoped the 3D images will encourage experts from around the world to study and learn more about the lives of the 700 crew on board. Volunteers are being recruited to help maintain security along the south coast. It follows 3 recent cases of people smuggling across the English Channel and warnings about the shortage of border force craft. Their primary role is to save lives, but they're also on the lookout for anything suspicious, as Richard Jones explains.
Between them, Peter Buckley and Trevor Jones have 65 years of experience of the sea, so they know what they're watching out for from their vantage point high above the entrance to Portsmouth Harbour.
We're the eyes along the coast. We're here to see people and to alert the Coast Guard. I mean, we use what we call our spot plot report. So we'll spot something, we'll plot it on the chart so we know exactly where it is, and we report it to the Coast Guard.
For almost 200 years there were Coast Guard lookout stations right along the south coast, which maintained a watch on what was going on. Now most have closed, and many Coast Guards sit at computer screens, often a long way from the sea. Some people were so concerned about the loss of the service that they set up the National Coast Watch Institution. Now it has 52 stations and more than 2,000 volunteers. The Shoreham base is just yards from the old Coast Guard lookout.
Their prime job wasn't actually looking out of their windows. Their prime job was coordinating the area between Beachy Head and Selsey Bill for traffic. We don't do that. We look out of the window.
This summer, MPs warned there aren't enough border patrol vessels to tackle people smuggling along the coast. And 3 cases of boats being used to bring migrants across the Channel raised further concerns. Coast Watch volunteers are aware their eyes and ears could help.
We are aware of this happening, and we are encouraged to be extra observant to any vessels coming in. It is probably unlikely that Portsmouth Harbour would be used in broad daylight for this, but it could be. After all, we've got an awful lot of vessels, sometimes several hundred an hour, coming in.
If we were to see an overloaded rib through our binoculars, we would see that as a vulnerable craft. So we would act on that. We would call the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard would deal with that.
The simple fact is that there are 80 miles between France and the Sussex coast, about 1/3 of the distance of the busiest migrant route between North Africa and Italy. There will almost certainly be more attempts to bring people across the Channel, and the volunteers of Coast Watch will be keeping an eye out, mainly to make sure no lives are lost. Richard Jones, ITV News.
South Downs is to benefit from national lottery funding to help its endangered wildlife. The £1.4 million grant will pay for work to restore heathland across the area. The Downs are home to many endangered species, including the natterjack toad and the sand lizard. And finally tonight, a brother and sister are celebrating after winning the P1 Powerboat Championships in Bournemouth. Sam and Daisy Coleman won 2 heats to wrap up the championship on the final weekend of racing. And they certainly made sure they enjoyed the moment. Well done to them. Now, what does the weather have in store over the next few days? With all the details tonight, here is Simon Parkin.
From puddles to paddling, driving through Europe. Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
Good evening. Well, if you don't work well in warm weather, unfortunately, it's a bit sticky overnight tonight. You might not sleep that much with lows of around 18, 19 degrees. That's pretty much daytime temperatures for this time of year. A lot of cloud around and some mist and fog developing too, so it will be another gloomy and murky start to tomorrow. A lot of dry weather, odd spots of drizzle here and there. Come the afternoon, some bright or sunny spells developing, but even under the cloud, it's going to feel quite warm and sticky with temperatures up to around 21, 22 degrees. That's 72 in Fahrenheit, with another grey start on Wednesday, brighter later.
Eurotunnel the Shuttle sponsors ITV Meridian weather.
And that's all from us. We're back during Good Morning Britain from 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. But from me and from all the team, have a very good evening. Good night.